You know, it started with something and then, you know, people just pick up on it and carry it along, turn into cartoon characters.
Recent reports published by WikiLeaks have revealed that the U.S. government is...
Tonight, an untimely death. Kurt Cobain was the lead singer of the group Nirvana. Tonight, word of an untimely death. Kurt Cobain was the lead singer of the group Nirvana.
You know, it started with something and then, you know, people just pick up on it and carry it along, turn into cartoon characters.
You see this?
You see this?
This whole thing from the beginning.
Right, it's 1990.
Okay. It makes sense. They wouldn't have been active yet.
I think we're just easy scapegoats. It's just, you know, it started with something and then, you know, people just pick up on it and carry it along, and we turn into cartoon characters.
Their albums were bestsellers, their songs filled with images of despair and violence. One lyric, "The sun is gone, but I have a light, the day is done, but I'm having fun." And then this morning,
his body found at home. His body found at home. Another casualty of success.
Another casualty.
Another casualty of success. Another casualty. Another casualty.
Here's ABC's Tom Foreman.
As lead singer, songwriter, and guitar player for Nirvana, Kurt Cobain defined the rough rock sound and scruffy look known as grunge. Kurt Cobain defined the rough rock sound and scruffy look known as grunge. Kurt Cobain defined the rough rock sound and scruffy look known as grunge. His band was sitting on top of the rock music world. This morning, an electrician went to Cobain's suburban Seattle home to do some work, looked in a window over the garage, and saw a body.
It was obvious this man is dead from a shotgun wound to the head. Now, there was a suicide note left inside the house.
Recently, it was clear Cobain was in trouble. Last month in Rome, he fell into a drug and alcohol-induced coma. Days ago, his band dropped out of a major American tour. It was rumored they were breaking up. Many people over 30 probably never heard of Kurt Cobain, but for younger fans, his music captured the spirit of the difficult transition from youth to maturity.
His songs were full of despair and violent images. He was only 27. Tom Foreman, ABC News, Los Angeles.
The question as to what leads people into the depths of depression has been debated for millennia, cast a shadow over our very existence. Sometimes this is triggered by an adverse or tragic event. The dark clouds that felt so consuming in the moment lift almost spontaneously, and life resumes on course. But for others, these feelings do not abate with time, but only intensify and depression sets in. One comes to view themselves as worthless, as an object of pity, hate, and anger, and life becomes a burden of the greatest magnitude. Why can some people recover quickly from adversity, while similar circumstances push others into a prolonged misery, as placing one at a great risk for depression? We are going to discuss the danger of relying too heavily on a limited number of sources for our feelings of self-worth. As humans, we have a need to feel that our life is of value and that we are here on Earth not merely to take up space, consume resources, and ultimately to die. This need to think well of ourselves and to have others do the same is one of the most fundamental shapers of our life. And so much of what we do is driven to satisfy this need. The job we take, who we associate with, the status symbols we adopt, and the social issues we champion are all influenced by whether they help or hinder us in this regard. For depression is often the result of a combination of two factors, and to creatively adapt to changes in our environment. Rather than believing they can imbue their life with meaning and become an individual of worth through self-directed action, in some cases, people rely too heavily on another person. Such are the individuals in constant need of the praise of a parent or a spouse to feel good about themselves. But while those who live like this may have good reasons for having slipped into such an existence, unfortunately this way of life never cures what ails them. The more psychologically rigid we will become, through our own efforts, and discovering how to feel like an individual of worth without the constant praise of another is a necessary life skill. We have only partial information, limited understanding, and imperfect control, yet the physical world and our social communities hold us responsible. Such is our shared existential predicament.
I don't know, those guys were belligerent, and it wasn't talk because they were very aggressive and threatening. There was no talk at all. It's like, come on, you said something about my band, come on. Or Axl told Kurt, I'm gonna put you down if he didn't watch his woman.
Yeah, he told me to keep my woman in line. You know, I couldn't believe it. We were sitting there eating food, and Axl walked by, and Courtney and I just jokingly said, "Axl, will you be the godfather of our child?" You know, we're just joking around, and he turned around and started pointing his finger, and was really aggressive and mean, like threatening to beat me up and stuff. And I couldn't help but laugh because I haven't been in that kind of a situation since I was in 6th grade. You know, I couldn't believe it.
And Duff McKagan wanted to fight me too for something I said, and he had about 3 bodyguards standing around there, and I got close to him, and the bodyguards warned me up a little bit, you know, like to stay away. And it's like, we could have talked about anything. You know, I haven't been in a fight since about the 6th grade either, and you know, if those guys have a beef with us, you know, they shouldn't, first of all, nobody asked them about anything, and they shouldn't go spouting their mouths off on stage in front of 50,000 people. I mean, they had no business doing that, so maybe we gave them a little taste of their own medicine, and they just get aggressive, you know, which is really ugly, and that's just some primitive human attribute that the world can really do without. Yeah, I mean, this isn't the schoolyard, you know, these are supposed to be adults, you know, influencing a lot of people. A lot of kids listen to Guns N' Roses, listen to Nirvana, you know, and then I think there's a lot more kids act a lot more mature than they do.
I've read Perfume by Patrick Susskind about 10 times in my life, and I can't stop reading it. It's like something that's just stationary in my pocket all the time. It just doesn't leave me, and every time I'm bored, like I'm on an airplane or something, I read it over and over again. Because I'm a hypochondriac, and it just affects me. It makes me want to cut my nose off. What's the book about? It's about this perfume apprentice in France at the turn of the century, and he is just disgusted basically with all humans, and he just can't get away from humans, so he goes on this trek, this walk of death, where he goes into the rural areas where there's, you know, woods all over the place in the small villages, and he only travels by night, and he just, every time he smells human, like a fire from a far off way, you know, he'll just get really disgusted and hide, and he just tries to stay away from people. I can relate to that.
Do you ever use what you read in any of your songs?
As a matter of fact, I use that very story in Scentless Apprentice. Yeah. So that's really one of the first times that I've ever used an actual story, you know, as a book, as an example of a song. You know, I've always tried to stay away from that, but now that I'm running out of ideas more and more, I tend to do that.
Is it hard when you spend your whole life doing the first few albums, and then suddenly everybody needs your attention, you have to do interviews, you have to travel around, and suddenly is it hard to come up with ideas?
I don't know. I've just noticed that people expect more of a thematic angle with our music. You know, they always want to read into it. And before, I was just using pieces of poetry and just garbage, you know, just stuff that just would spew out of me at the time. And a lot of times when I write lyrics, it's just at the last second because I'm really lazy.
His songs were full of despair and violent images.
Expect more of a thematic angle with our music. You know, they always want to read into it. And before, I was just using pieces of poetry and just garbage, you know, just stuff that just would spew out of me at the time. And a lot of times when I write lyrics, it's just at the last second because I'm really lazy.
Bestsellers, they're songs filled with images of despair and violence.
So, and then I find myself having to come up with explanations for it, you know, so I thought I'd, you know, prevent that this time and actually have an explanation for some of the songs at least.
There's a lot of baby references in all the songs. I didn't think there would be, but you have like wombs, babies, baby's breath, baby throw up, baby
throw up?
Baby, there's baby everywhere.
Lying.
Is that this is obviously have become a huge part of your life?
It has been a part of my life before Courtney was even pregnant, though. I've always been just fascinated with medical texts and charts, and I guess I secretly want to be a doctor or something. I don't know, or or a person that works in a cremation factory. I don't know. I've always liked anatomy. Ever since I was a little kid, when I first got that little model of the Invisible Man, or the Visible Man, it's just something I really like. And since I've become a big rock star and made a bunch of money, I found this place in the Mall of America in Minneapolis that sells nothing but medical stuff. It's a medical supply store that they've offered to the public. It's really great. I bought all these fetuses and anatomy men and charts and stuff, and it was like a dream come true. Because I've always been really poor, and if I could find something like that in a second-hand store, I'd barely have enough money to buy it. And a lot of times I couldn't buy that stuff, so I just went on this rampage of buying all this stuff. And I think I've overused it, for like pictures for the album, and I don't know. I just went overboard on it.
The old saying that you can't buy happiness. You think that's true?
Well, yeah, you can't buy happiness. I mean, that made me happy for a little while. But, I mean, I was just probably almost just as happy with, I don't know. I look back on going to secondhand stores and stuff like that and finding a little treasure like that. And that actually meant more to me because it was more of a stab in the dark in a way, because you didn't know if you're going to be able to afford it, and you don't know what you're really looking for, and when you find it, it's more special to you rather than having $1,000 and going into a store like that and just buying the whole store. It's not as special.
What excites you now?
My baby, my marriage. I don't know. I still like playing too. I mean, Chris and Dave and I haven't changed at all. I mean, believe it or not, we get along just as well as we ever did. We're just as the same passive-aggressive people as we used to be. We never fight. When we're pissed off at each other, we just hold it under our breath and have respect for one another in that way. It's easier to work that way. Because we have a mission, I guess.
How do you personally cope with having relationships, private relationships that are always being scrutinized publicly? It must be really difficult.
Well, it is, but I mean, I still have a lot of the same friends that I used to have, so they don't seem to mind, and that isn't ever really exposed too much. No one writes about how me and my friend Dylan walked down the street and did whatever, but
yeah, but they rip apart you and Courtney. They love to do that.
Yeah, I don't know why, but we're just I don't know. I guess like my ego could be talking right now, and I could say, well, we're interesting people, but I think we're just easy scapegoats. It's just, it started with something, and then, people just pick up on it and carry it along, and we turn into cartoon characters. And, it started with something, and then, people just pick up on it and carry it along, and we turn into cartoon characters. And, people just pick up on it and carry it along, and we turn into cartoon characters. And there's nothing I can do about it, really. I can threaten to sue and, try to bring up libel laws and stuff like that to people that write shit like that about us. But, if you've ever looked into that, it's pretty much a lost cause. You have to have a lot of money to do that. And, I could spend the money that I earned last year all on fighting the Vanity Fair piece, and they'd end up winning because they have more money, So I'm sarcastically, and it just caught on.
Who's that?
He's one of the head honchos at Sub Pop Records. But no one set out to market this music as that, that's what happens when the media catches on. They have to call it something. No one set out to market this music as that, that's what happens when the media catches on. They have to call it something. No one set out to market this music as that, that's what happens when the media catches on. They have to call it something. I like it as much as New Wave. I would have been proud to be a New Waver, 15 years ago.
Oh yeah, well, we were about the same age. I was into New Wave, absolutely. Do you think you
Me
have
too.
some of the same is there anything the same between your music and new wave?
I think so.
Like what?
Well, like, you know, new wave was just a progression from punk rock and a mutation of punk rock, you know, and it was more commercial and more palatable, you know. It had, you know, punk rock roots, and it was easier to swallow for the media and middle America and the middle of the world, and it's just, you know, that's what I kind of think about our music.
Are you worried about a Nirvana backlash?
Hasn't that already been over with? Hasn't that already happened? I don't know. Sure. No. I don't know.
Okay. What is it talking about?
But we're getting more new wave as the days go by. I think we're going to reinvent new wave and bring back breakdancing. I'd really like to bring back new wave and breakdancing. You know, meld it to something. I don't know. That's what our new music is sounding like. We're using a lot more effects boxes, and we haven't resorted to skinny ties, but I think our music's, you know, this album's like the closing of the chapter of the formula we've been using, you know. It's like grunge is really kind of boring for us, you know. The closing of the chapter of the formula we've been using, you know. It's like grunge is really kind of boring for us, you know. It's something we can't deny, and we're not going to stop playing the old songs live. Whoops. And but you know, our tastes are just changing so rapidly that we're really experimenting with a lot of stuff, and it might get too indulgent and be really embarrassing for the next album, but we can't put out another album, and this is just like the last chapter of 3-chord grunge music for us. And it was an easy thing to do and a safe thing to do because we knew it's still popular, you know, but we had to get it out of our systems.
How come you are so nice, and you seem so comfortable with yourself? Something must have really happened in the last couple of years. Is it just falling in love?
No.
What happened?
I've always been a nice guy.
Maybe you were afraid to show it before. How's that?
Well, what? I don't know. You've never met me before,
I never met
so.
you before, but I know that other people who have had the opportunity to interview, and they said, oh, he hates doing interviews, he's not going to want to talk about anything.
Well,
I said, well, you know, whatever, who knows? And you're just like exactly the opposite of...
It just depends on what mood I'm in, really. Yeah, I'm kind of a moody person, and a lot of times when someone has had the chance to talk to me, I've probably been on tour, or I've probably gone through an exhaustive time where I've talked about myself for hours and hours, and this week I haven't had to talk about myself very much, so
Lucky
probably
me.
more cooperative.
I think one of the interesting things about Nirvana that you don't really talk about that much is that you're very concerned about sexism. I like that. That's good. So how do you make people aware of that problem?
By writing songs as blunt as Rape Me. Having to resort to doing something like that is almost embarrassing because people didn't understand when we wrote a song like about a girl or Polly, and having to explain that and having misunderstandings about it, I decided to write Rape Me in a way that was just so blunt and obvious that it's like no one could deny it, you know, no one could read into it any other way, you know, although some people have actually, because some of the lyrics in it, some people have thought that maybe it has something to do with my disgust with the media and the way they've treated us and stuff like that, but it's not true. That's not what the song's about at all. It's just my way of, in a sarcastic way almost, of like just saying how obvious do we have to be, you know. And I guess we don't talk about those kind of things that, you know, that are really important to us because I don't want to be thought of as like nothing more than a PC band, you know. I mean, we're entertainers. I don't want to be thought of as like nothing more than a PC band, you know. I mean, we're entertainers. You know, that's what music is, and so it's really hard to, you know, step over the lines, you know.
His songs were full of despair and violent images.
You have so much power because that camera's on you. Right, you can use it.
Yeah, well, we try to use our power. I mean, we really have been effective in certain ways, like being associated with this organization called FAIR, and I can't remember it right now because I have a mental block of exactly what it stands for. Right now because I have a mental block of exactly what it stands for. Right now because I have a mental block of exactly what it stands for. But it's something like, shit, I can't remember. Shit, I can't remember. But they're an organization who looks at the injustices that are. They look at the details that surrounds certain issues and certain stories that have been reported in magazines and newspapers like USA Today, who tend to look over a lot of the facts, and they're pretty much a leftist organization that tries to protect people in certain areas, and they supposedly try as hard as they can to deliver the truth. And so we've done benefits like that for like No on 9 benefits to try to stop Portland's anti-gay laws that they were trying to pass, and we did a Bosnian benefit and stuff like that. And it doesn't seem like much, but we raised like $50,000 for the Bosnian rape victims.
Their songs filled with images of despair and violence.
And that's a lot more than we could have done griping about it and talking about it in interviews and like maybe putting out a fanzine. There's nothing wrong with doing stuff like that, but we're using the tools that we have, and we're being effective as much as we can. But we still don't want to be too political at the same time, We're using the tools that we have, and we're being effective as much as we can. But we still don't want to be too political at the same time, because it's just kind of embarrassing to do that. Or, you get a lot of ridicule for it.
Yeah, but you're doing what you believe in, and that's the most important thing.
Well, it's hard not to, I mean, if you're put in this position, what are you going to do? You become a Republican or something? Just to protect what you've earned, big deal.
Okay.
Is it all right to smoke on Canadian television?
It's too late now. You're already out of sure. Do what you want.
I've only had
we're
3.
doing a special on the Replacements, and I was just wondering if they had at all any influence on you as a songwriter, on the music you make.
I kind of wish they did, because there's so many comparisons to us. I have to be honest, I really didn't like the Replacements when I was into punk rock music. I listened to them, and I liked the sound of it, and I don't know if that, I think my appreciation for R.E.M. and the Beatles and stuff like that had more to do with it, because I really wasn't aware of Soul Asylum and the Replacements and those bands. I knew about them, and I actually saw them live and stuff, and I just didn't get it. I didn't like it that much.
And can we have a comment, please, on... I'll wait till you light this one, because this is such an... What is your comment on Muzak being being here at the capital of Muzak, being here in Seattle?
Well, it's an obvious thing to happen, something that you'd expect. Oh, I thought you were talking about the Muzak this Muzak record that they put out of Grunge Light.
Oh, the Grunge Light. Oh, what do you think of that?
It's
that
great.
Girl?
Sure. It's an obvious thing to happen, It's the last chapter on the book of grunge. But the Muzak capital, that's where, so this is the place where most Muzak comes from? I didn't even know that. I thought there was just, one station here.
Seattle is the capital of Muzak.
Thanks for letting me know about that.
You thought it was grunge? No. Oh, we were there, but they're not doing your songs.
Bummer.
They said it was too aggressive? It would make people too excited.
Oh, well. We have some pretty songs too. God, that's really a bummer. That upsets me. But I don't know. Muzak, that's pretty neat.
But they didn't like the Grunge Light album because the woman sent a copy to them. And
really?
They didn't like it because it was too electronic, and they're into using real musicians.
Oh yeah, I like that idea better too. Yeah. I liked it when Devo did their Muzak version of their songs. That was really neat. Did you ever hear that? That was nice. And I think they use real musicians for that.
Did you get to hang out with them, Devo?
Mm-hmm.
I know that you're a bit of a fan of theirs.
No. Never met them.
Did you ever get to meet anyone who would be like your hero? Anyone that you're real pleased that you got to meet?
Yeah. That's kind of a positive side of being a rock and roll star. But no, actually I met Iggy Pop before we were rock and roll stars. And Iggy Pop is pretty much the only person that I've met that I really, really admire and like. And
when you met him, were you pleased?
yeah, it was a big excitement. Yeah, I mean, it was great. I didn't ask him for an autograph. I tried not to bother him the way that I thought that I might be bothered. But I don't know. And then the other person is William Burroughs. I met him, and I actually got to put out a record with him. So.
Yeah, tell me about the record that you're doing with William Burroughs.
Well, it's already out. It's just a 10-inch. It's just one story of his called The Priest They Called Him. And it was a long-distance recording. He had recorded his version, and then I just played a bunch of guitar noises in the background, and they mixed it somewhere else, and it came out. And now we're talking about putting out a whole album.
Wow.
Yeah.
Of him reading his work and you playing guitar underneath?
Yeah, I think I'll play a bunch of instruments this time instead of just, fucking off like I did before. It was just a last minute thing where I just made a bunch of noise, but this time I'd like to kind of work on it. Maybe I'll do a Muzak version.
I'm sure William Burroughs would love that, a little bit of Muzak.
Yeah.
The last thing I want to ask you about is, I'm not sure who in your band said it, it could have been you, could have been someone else, but someone being a little perturbed by your mainstream audience and wanting to just make music for your real fans.
Well, a couple of years ago when we were making these bold negative statements about things like that, we were really confused, and we were scared. We were afraid that we would lose a lot of our audience that meant a lot to us, because they're people that, we hopefully feel that we have a connection with, the college students and people in the underground. And I don't think we've lost them. I think they're still fans, so I'm not worried about it anymore. And I was at the time.